that's where we begin. A Minneapolis story, but an American problem. Fear and sadness. Parents and children, an entire community there grappling with the tragedy at a church. 2 children shot and killed during morning mass at a Catholic school. The first week of school, they were just back from the summer break. 17 other people hurt in this incident. 14 of those people, children themselves. Police say the shooter died at the back of the church by suicide right there at the scene. No official motive has been announced. CBS Evening News co-anchor Maurice Dubois is on the ground for us, leading our coverage outside Annunciation Church in Minneapolis. Maurice, here we go again. Good morning.
We are going again here, Tony. No one can get their heads around this thing. It was just the 3rd day of school for students at Annunciation Catholic here in Minneapolis. They teach kids from preschool through 8th grade. They were gathered for Mass when those shots rang out, shattering what should have been moments of peace, prayer, reflection, anticipation, replaced instead by violence and death. As this community mourns, the FBI is investigating the attack as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. CBS News has confirmed the shooter, 23-year-old Robin Westman, was once a student at the school whose mother previously worked there. We'll have more details on the investigation in just a few minutes, but first, Usher Qureshi here now with more on how this happened. Usher, good morning to you.
Good morning, Maurice. Well, the Minneapolis police chief says all 17 injured shooting victims are expected to survive, and leaders here are sending a unified message. Action is needed to ensure this never happens again. We should warn you that the following video is hard to watch.
Where's the shooter? Where's the shooter?
No one knows.
Oh my gosh.
Terrifying video provided to CBS News by a parent shows panicked children running out of the chapel at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis, moments after a shooter opened fire during morning mass Wednesday.
It was like right beside me. I was like 2 seats away from the stained glass windows.
5th grader Weston Halsney said he hid under a pew as the shooter fired through the windows from outside.
My friend Victor saved me though, because he laid on top of me, but he got hit. He's really brave, and I hope he's good in the hospital.
Police say 2 students, an 8 and 10-year-old, were killed, and the shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in the church parking lot. It's not clear if the shooter ever entered the building.
That coward has been identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman. No prior criminal history. As to the weapons used to perpetrate this horrific attack, there was a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. All 3 had been lawfully purchased.
According to law enforcement, first responders swarmed the scene immediately, rushing the 17 surviving victims to area hospitals. And after parents arrived to reunite with their children, some visibly overcome by emotion, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey said it was time to take action.
Don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance.
Now, law enforcement executed 4 search warrants yesterday, 1 at Annunciation and 3 at residences tied to the shooter. The police chief said a smoke bomb was discovered at the church and additional firearms were being recovered at those residential locations. Maurice.
Okay. Usher Qureshi, thank you so much.
Hey, we want to thank you for tuning in and joining You and the Law podcast. I'm the host of the show, Chief Virgil Green. It's tragic that we start the podcast off by talking about another mass shooting that took place in Minneapolis, where I'm a police chief in a suburb city of Minneapolis. And so the last 24 hours has definitely been a tragic event for Minneapolis and just even for the state of Minnesota, that there's been another mass shooting at a Catholic church. And, Monday was the first day of school, and the kids didn't even have enough time to even get to enjoy just coming out of the summer break, getting back into school, and now their lives have been forever changed. But let me bring on my guest to the podcast, who's no stranger to You and the Law podcast. Monty, thank you for joining me, man.
Absolutely, thank you, Chief. I'm loving this. I'm loving being back with you. Not under these circumstances. Yeah,
it it is tragic that it is unfortunate, not tragic, unfortunate we're having this conversation once again about another mass shooting at a school. And the fact that, after Uvalde happened, everybody was saying that, the same they've said about every other mass shooting, there needs to be more gun reform, more change. But nothing has happened. And, one of the things that I have shared on my social media platform is that even with the mayor saying yesterday, we always hear, Monty, our thoughts and prayers. I think families are kind of, and not to say that thoughts and prayers are not needed, but people need more than thoughts and prayers. I think people are, there's no answer to what happened. But, I think that's the first thing people say. And I don't know if people don't know what else to say other than say our thoughts and prayers are with the loved ones and the victims.
Yeah. You know what? It's time to be honest. It's time, again, we have had a whole decade of not being honest. Let's say what's really on everybody's mind. They're angry. They're angry, at the shooter. They're angry at this circumstance. They're angry at politicians that, again, they're okay with saying thoughts and prayers and looking so, pious and sad. But and the reality is they're not doing anything. People are not doing anything. And we're not dealing with reality. We are allowing these situations to happen. I'm all for every possibility. People will say all kind of crazy stuff. Well, hey, we're going to do away with all the guns. Just okay. It's not reality, and that's not doing anything. That's just
exactly
more emotion.
Yeah,
we don't want to look and be honest. We've got a problem here. We can notice a pattern here. At least we don't need to target, people that identify as transgender, but we're seeing a pattern here. And we understand that psychologists years ago identified this as a mental health issue. We need to have some empathy and really look at this and say, what's going on here? They executed another search warrant at this person's house, and there was a treasure trove of firearms. You kind of mentioned it, earlier.
Yeah.
No one noticed anything that this person who once a male now identifies as a female. But look, I don't mean to be judgmental. This doesn't seem right. You can see by looking at this person, they're walking in the house with bags of firearms. It does.
Yeah.
People want to think, well, I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be that person that's saying something, because I don't want someone to think that I'm being a bigot.
Yeah.
Come on. Now we're scared to do the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, Monty, as I mentioned to you earlier, we've always had this saying, see something, say something.
Right.
We've got a society that really, they're more in tune to take out their cell phone and record something and be the next viral on TikTok or YouTube. But if you're living next door to somebody and there are some odd behaviors in that person, you would think, let me call somebody because I've got kids. I don't know what this person is doing. There's some erratic behavior. I'm hearing all kind of noises late at night, whatever. But this is something, and I'm pretty sure somebody's going to say, well, could have been prevented. Yeah, it could have been prevented if people would have noticed some things, whether it's family, friends. But she was 23 years old. How does a 23-year-old go out and purchase that type of firearm?
No, multiple. And Chief, you are being, I'm going to call it this now. I say politically incorrect. I'm going to say, ethically incorrect. God doesn't make a whole lot of, mistakes.
Yeah.
He makes no mistakes.
Yeah.
And we could be confused, and we start off as a male, we start off as a female. Hey, I will have empathy and love for you, but the fact of the matter is that was a male.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have these, and I do appreciate the fact that you want to, but this, we have let it go far, way off into the woods, as to letting everything is acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
And that's the problem. Like, hey, no one is rationally thinking, I don't want to offend you. Look, I mean, what's next? Chief, you get to identify as a white male.
Well,
and we've I was going to say a cat, but we've had that. We literally have had people say, I identify as a cat. And you know what? This craziness has happened.
Yeah.
Public sector has actually put a little cat litter. This is how far off we are.
Yeah. Well, Monty, I don't know if you remember this movie, and I may be a little older than you, Monty. There was a movie called The Watermelon Man. And
yes.
This movie was about a black male who all of a sudden one day he was a white man.
Yep.
And you could not tell him that he was a black man. He was a white man.
Yeah.
But he looked like a black man.
Yeah.
And so can you imagine somebody walking around now saying, I identify as a white man,
right?
But people are looking at you saying, whoa, wait a second, brother, you black.
Right.
How can you identify it like that? And I think, the point you're making is that people have accepted some things, and it's not to disrespect anybody, but at the same time, this is something that we need to talk about in society. And what are the consequences of what we're dealing with?
It's not just talk about it. That's the thing. You now have to take action because there is a disconnect between reality. Who is thinking that makes sense? Where we're going to suspend reality and then think that person should be on the short list for buying firearms. Perhaps we might want to take a closer look. You know what I mean? Yeah. That might be the thing. I mean, I love all people, period. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, and I don't get to be the judge.
Yeah.
The reality is this is a situation where we're caught. If nothing else, in our mind, we have cognitive dissonance where am I a woman or a man? That alone is dangerous.
Yeah.
That should be a signal if we want to just, hey, maybe we should pause for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, maybe we should pause. I mean, we're talking about, buying multiple firearms. This man went to a store dressed as a woman where, the gun dealer has to be like, this is not a woman.
Yeah.
Like there's something wrong here. Yeah. And it doesn't this is off. This is not a matter of, well, here comes a black man. I don't want to sell to a black man, or I don't want to sell to, whatever. This isn't necessarily the way it's kind of be. Maybe we should take a pause. And I'm sorry if that offends someone, but the reality is maybe there's something else going on.
Yeah. Well, and as we're talking about the tragic events that unfolded in Minneapolis with the Catholic school shooting, you have to wonder, how can somebody walk into any gun place, purchase this amount of weapons, this amount of ammunition, and nobody not say anything? And, you don't look like the person that you're portraying to be.
Right.
And so it's just, unfortunately, Monty, we've said this in the past, especially on our podcast, is that this will not be the last mass shooting at a school.
Yeah.
This will not be the last mass shooting that will take place in any other city, even if it's not at a school, because, people are, we always say, guns don't kill people, people kill people. But at the same time, we've got to, and this is not a red thing. This is not a blue thing. This is not an independent thing. This is about, we're the only country that continues to deal with this type of mass casualty related to firearms. So
Sure. Yeah.
It definitely has to, and I just go back to.
I would say this: if you're going to have, again, it's pretty wide open. You're right; it's pretty wide open as far as anybody can buy firearms, and that's always been, kind of my fear, that everybody can have one. And when I would work undercover, you would just wonder, what civilian is going to come in? Is he going to realize if there's a robbery in place and I pull my gun and my badge? Is he going to take time to think? I'm always kind of been worried about that.
Yeah.
And I would say this, perhaps in this area, maybe we could, slow down a little bit and be a little, take more precautions in this. If we offend someone because we took another step, maybe that might be worth it. And by the way, think about this, and truly showing empathy.
Mm-hmm.
How much pain does this human have to be in that seemed like a rational thing to do, to buy all these firearms and then go shoot up that church? This is what I'm saying. Like, again, let's push it all the way out, guys.
Yeah.
We think that we're against people. The reality is, think how much pain this human has to be in. You're right. No one's noticed. So on this day, like, to your point, he suddenly just lost it. I would suspect that some of the, his thoughts were highly negative, highly charged, and no one thought, like, gosh, this person is in a lot of pain.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, I'm pretty, he was a former student at that school.
Right.
His mother used to work at that school. So he knew the layout of the building. He knew, school had just recently started. School actually started on Monday.
Right.
So, to carry this out, 2 days into the school year was probably, there was some planning that he had already done, that this was what he was going to do.
Well, I mean, it's been reported that there's definitely some premeditation and all these other things. But again, we've got parents that, again, we are so disconnected by our kids. We're not taking responsibility. I mean, like, your son who lives in your house brings an arsenal, who now was your son that you birthed, is now, wearing women's clothing and has an arsenal. We have that script. Mom and dad, if you see this, there's a script. Now it's no longer, well, I wonder what he's going to do. I wonder if he's going to join the Marines, or that's not what's happening. The next thing is going to probably be, we're going to be on, ABC News of another shooting. So someone has to be the adult. We have to stop burying our heads and be reality. We may not like it, and maybe we feel guilty for whatever has happened. But there is a reoccurring theme.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Well, hey, Monty, I want to remind those who are just now tuning into the podcast, we want to thank you for joining You and the Law podcast. We've been talking about the mass shooting that took place in Minneapolis at the Catholic school. But tonight, our real topic has been about, tonight's topic is the use of the military as domestic law enforcement. That has been, that's what we're here to talk about tonight. But, Monty, there's a lot of conversation about using the military in DC. Now you got people are talking about using the military, the president taking them to Chicago and all these other major cities. You're a former military person in the Marines. What's your opinion on the use of military working alongside law enforcement in a capacity that is really no different in a domestic role? Sure.
Yeah. So, I definitely have feelings, all the way around. We want to, my gut reaction is to, strict adherence to the Constitution, and that is, but then if I take a really chunked up view, ladies and gentlemen, whether you're a Republican or Democrat or whatever, and I'm an independent, Here's what we are failing to acknowledge. There are mothers and fathers that are losing, kids. I don't care if you call the National Guard. I don't care if you call the Salvation Army. I don't care if you call the Girl Scouts. Get everybody up there that you can that can stop this. And why is this is actually now okay? It's unacceptable that we lose one life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I'm not a fan, period, of having to, but that should be an urgent call to everyone. Drop the D, drop the R, whatever you got to do. I mean, it's an epidemic. People don't deserve to live, in that kind of fear. That's what we're forgetting. See, it's a big population, and we don't really see people, as our brothers and sisters. But this is the type of terror that they're living with.
Yeah.
And so how do I feel about it? Part of me is like, gosh, this is, are we really here? But the other part is, if I was a father, there with my family, and I actually experienced this, I gotta say, like, whatever you need, whatever you got to do to kind of stop these constant shootings and killings and this kind of,
Yeah.
That's the reaction.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of this is, unfortunately, you got the politics that's in the middle of this.
Yep.
I think this is something that, I've talked to a lot of people about this, and, we can go back to what took place January the 6th with the insurrection, where, everybody was saying, where's the National Guard at? It took forever. The only person who can activate the National Guard is in DC, is the president. I mean, and I think a lot of people don't kind of relate to the home rule that the DC falls under, and it's pretty complicated. How that government functions within a government, and that the federal government has so much oversight over the Metropolitan Police Department. And so, and I think this is the thing, if you really want to work alongside law enforcement, this problem has been going on in DC for quite some time.
Yeah.
Crime has definitely decreased, but why didn't you activate the National Guard in your first term?
Yeah.
Why didn't you activate or put in place more resources for the Metropolitan Police Department to deal with this type of violence that's going on in DC or any other city?
Well, here's what I would ask you, Chief. Here's where I would ask us to, we get sucked into, politics.
Yeah.
And I would ask more, of our brothers and sisters in law enforcement to step out and be independent and remember that we are responsible for that flock. I don't care. I truthfully don't care. I don't want to lose one. And that's where we're like, well, why, the violence has been going on. Are we not ready to throw up? Are we not outraged, about what's going on? We lose one child. I mean, I don't need to see another child, child from Chicago or DC. That we don't move heaven and earth. We allow politicians on both sides to acquiesce and say it's the Democrats' problem, it's the Republicans' problem. When do we say, all of you out? I need solutions.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. I mean, you got people who will say, well, it's this administration problem.
Right. It's an American problem. And that's what bottom line is this. This is absolute BS. If anybody starts framing this, anybody, you take advantage, but the bottom line is, meanwhile, citizens in all these major cities are suffering, and we're playing, political ping pong. And it's time for us to take as leaders and to step out of it and educate our civilian leaders. And enough is enough. These half budgets, these, things that we're not really all in. Our first priority as government leaders is to protect our people. We're not doing it.
No, we're not. We're not. Monty, I got a video that I want to pull up and show, and that kind of give a little context to the topic that we're talking about tonight. So I'm going to play this here news clip, and on the other side of this, we'll get back into this conversation. But if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, please join in on the chat. If you got any questions, comments, put them into the chat, and we'll definitely get to those throughout the podcast. But again, thank you for tuning in and joining us on our social media platforms on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook as well. So, Monty, I'm going to play this news clip, and we'll talk about this on the other side.
Well, thank you for joining us on this Friday evening. I'm Scott Thuman, and there are several new developments that have escalated the federal takeover in D.C., including some very threatening words from President Trump when it comes to Mayor Bowser's position of leadership. You'll hear what he said in just a moment, but we're going to begin with the news that the National Guard is authorized to carry weapons around the city. This applies to both members of the D.C. National Guard and the 6 states who have deployed troops here. 7 News' Felicia Ashley has the details and reaction from the community.
The update coming today from the Pentagon, telling 7 News that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth made the order. Mayor Bowser doesn't support it.
I don't think you have an armed militia in the nation's capital.
President Donald Trump spoke to some of the troops in Southeast D.C. the night before the announcement.
You got to be strong, you got to be tough, you got to do your job. Whatever it takes to do your job, you got to do your job.
This afternoon, he spoke to people who live and work in areas where we've seen the most troops so far.
I mean, as long as D.C. authorities give them permission to be armed in their city, I guess it's okay. I mean, I can't make the call, you know. I mean, if that helps makes the city safer, let's do it.
That's really weird. That's really freaky. That's messed up.
Now that the 2,000 troops currently in D.C. will be armed, I asked the White House and Pentagon if there'll be a change in their rules of engagement. The Pentagon said it had nothing to add. We're still pushing to learn from the White House as well as the Department of Defense where the troops will be across D.C. and the reason for now arming them while they're on patrol. For now, reporting from Union Station, Felicia Ashley, 7 News.
All right, and now to today's other big development. President Trump once again accusing Mayor Muriel Bowser of putting out false data to make D.C. seem safer than it is. And he's now threatening the mayor with a complete and total federal takeover of the city, first on Truth Social and then this afternoon at the White House.
I'm tired of listening to these people say how safe it was before we got here. It was unsafe. It was horrible. And Mayor Bowser better get her act straight or she won't be mayor very long because we'll take it over with the federal government, run it like it's supposed to be run.
Now, it's not clear what the president means when he says a complete and total federal takeover. Meanwhile, 7 News reached out to the mayor's office for a response to the president's remarks, but we've yet to hear anything. However, the mayor has defended the accuracy of that data being released. And here's what she said Wednesday when asked about the Justice Department opening a criminal investigation into whether D.C. crime numbers have been altered.
We know that crime has gone down in our city, and it has gone down precipitously over the last 2 years because of a lot of hard work. And we know that those facts don't comport to what some people are saying, but those are the facts.
Now, a lawsuit over manipulated data several years ago was just settled. Meanwhile, the president is boasting about stats released this week by the administration as being accurate. It shows violent crime is down nearly half compared to this time last year. Continuing the trend, city leaders have celebrated there have been no murders for 9 consecutive days. And one other news item today with the federal takeover, the president announced he would request $2 billion from Congress to beautify D.C. Trump says the money would be used.
Well, Monty, there's a lot to unpack with that.
Absolutely. I mean, we're putting National Guard on there, and look, you know, domestic law enforcement, you know, we already have a problem with the level of training that our domestic, you know, officers, you know, getting, let alone putting National Guard. That's not necessarily what they are. Are they MPs? Yeah. However, that's not having been an MP, you know, started, you know, my career in the military, and that's not what we're trained to do. You know, now I'm not a fan of sticking troops in the city unarmed. But I do want clear, concise rules of engagement. There's a lot to really unpack.
Oh yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, and one of the things that struck me, Monty, let me kind of, I got a look, got some echo going on here, but members of the National Guard, they have regular jobs. They're not, some work in the corporate world. You may have some who are active, or from, they may work in law enforcement. They're just from a broad spectrum of that career. And so to now say, here you are, we're putting you in DC or any other city, and now you're going to be enforcing laws. I mean, how do you say, okay, well, this is what they want me to do, but my normal job has been working, at a data, I may be a data analyst somewhere, but now here I am out here on the streets of DC carrying a firearm, and with very little training.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, look, I'm all for help, but again, at some point, you're right. You might be making things worse. It's bad enough how we are, the level of training, domestically for the average cop, let alone, to your point, this is not their specialty. This is not
exactly.
This is nobody's specialty in the military. Now, I don't mind, from time to time, but we have to, come up with a better strategy. We're very reactionary, and instead of like, okay, if this really is, to your point, if we've now identified that there's a real problem and these cities need real help, then we need a massive injection of funds into these cities, really into the entire country, not little drips and drabs. If we can show this, that makes a big difference. We need to step up a ton more for hiring officers, a ton for more, advanced training.
Yeah.
And again, better officers on the street with again, a real level of professionalism.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely right, Monty. And I think, one of the things we go back to, just as you mentioned, your profession is in training law enforcement officers.
Right.
You know more than anybody how much training police officers need, and you've seen where there's gaps in training, and so to expect one day you're working as a data analyst, or you're working in some other corporate business, or just even from the private sector, and now here you are being deployed to patrol the streets in DC. Without very little training,
right?
That's setting some things up for not to be successful,
right?
And so, again, there's been a crime problem, not just in DC, but every other major city is dealing with crime. But you've seen a lot of funding that has been reduced from hiring police officers. There's not a lot of grant money out there for cities to, like with the cops grant, there's not a lot of funding out there. So if you're really serious about tackling crime, there needs to be, like you mentioned, more funding put in, more training, and a way to retain people. And this, Monty, there's not a lot of people who are knocking the doors down to become police officers. After COVID, and after everything that happened with George Floyd, you saw a lot of people leaving law enforcement from certain parts of the country. From some areas, you really didn't see it, but I know up in the Midwest, up where I am now, in the Minneapolis area, there was just a lot of people who left the law enforcement profession because of some things that were going on.
Yeah. So this is where we sometimes misinterpret the evidence, and this is where some chiefs, again, misinterpret and think that is the root cause. It is actually a lack of leadership and a lack of support, that people said enough is enough. If I have I have no support. This is a very dangerous, situation where I can be thrown to the wolves. Has nothing to do with, hey, it's dangerous, because again, those that sign up for this, they're a different breed and they get it. They're servant leaders and they step forward. We're not recruiting those anymore. We're recruiting anybody to fill a spot, and job fillers. Those are completely different people, and after all that, they're gone. We do not recruit, the alphas and the true servant leaders, because our messaging is really off and the culture and leadership is really gone. We are acquiescing a lot of this to civilians that don't know, that are just feeling the heat from the public. They want to know, why is it these officers are overreacting or not doing their jobs well? Well, because they're underfunded and undertrained, and you put them in bad situations and get, like, to your point. Now imagine adding a couple thousand, National Guard into this mix. We make it even worse, thinking that we're gonna. Sometimes more is not better.
Exactly.
And so we don't have a strategy. We're just reactionary, and that only makes things worse. To your point.
Yeah. Well, Monty, you made a good point about leadership. Something that you talk about a lot on your LinkedIn platform about leadership. There's certain agencies that have good leadership from the top down,
right?
And they don't have a problem with retaining people.
No, they got waiting.
They got waiting lists, and they don't have a problem with recruiting. And again, like you mentioned, it's all about who's at the top and what is the tone that police chief or that sheriff is setting, or even that commissioner for that Department of Public Safety, to make people feel that they're valued, make people feel that you're investing in their profession.
Right.
And there is some, because this isn't a profession that people are going to say, oh man, you're going to make a lot of money. You and I know. I mean, this isn't about making money. You have to have the mindset of being somebody who wants to serve the public.
Right.
And so again, it's all about, that's a key component of it. Like you just mentioned, is the leadership part. Monty, I think, when we talk about tonight's topic of the use of military as domestic law enforcement, I go back to what I saw in Katrina, with Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
How the military came in, it was total chaos. And I saw a recent interview with the Army. I don't know if he was a general or what his role was, but he came in and pretty much changed how the military role was in New Orleans.
Yep.
And that was a prime example, is that you sending the military in, even on a natural disaster such as a hurricane, and there's the military, they got their weapons out. It's almost like what we're seeing in DC now.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling people, put those so-and-so weapons down, put them down, and that's not what people were dying from being in a hurricane.
Right.
But you had people who were not trained. They were sent there to help people, but they were more or less on an enforcement position.
Right.
And so, when you look back at things like, Hurricane Katrina, you look back at all these other incidents where the military has been deployed, there's some good use of military,
Sure.
but at the same time, you have to work with your local law enforcement leaders, because I know the police chief in DC, but can you imagine it's like, okay, well, now all of my powers are stripped. What, we're doing the best that we can do with the resources that we have.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, now you've got the politics comes in, and you have people who are saying, well, we can send the military into DC much more easy than we can send them in, or the National Guard into Chicago or any other city. And I'll say this, I don't know if you caught this while that news clip I was playing. You've got about 9 other states who have deployed their National Guard to D.C.
Right.
One of those states is Mississippi.
Yeah.
Jackson, Mississippi is one of the most violent cities
It is the violent. It's the number 1 most violent city in the country. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about that?
Where's the National Guard there?
Yeah. Well, again, let's chunk up, and to your point, are the citizens of DC any more important than the citizens of Jackson Jackson, Mississippi? And so why do we not have a serious comprehensive response to crime and safety? And again, like, resources are being siphoned off from Mississippi to be sent to DC.
Yeah.
And again, what's the strategy? That's what I would ask. That's my concern, and I think that's what you alluded to. Yeah. What's the strategy? What are we really trying to do? Well, we're reducing crime. Okay, by how? What's the measurement? What are the metrics, and who's in charge, and how do we measure that? And what do we to what end goal? Are we just run around for a while and show some numbers go down? What are we really trying to do here? We don't have an overall strategy about anything.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing, as you mentioned about the overall strategy. How long is the National Guard? How long is are these military personnel going to be in DC? Is this for 6 months?
Right.
Is this for another year?
Right. It's a great point. Like, because you really need to be tied into, are we there so that they can, recruit more, train more, or what's the strategy so that we can, again, at some point you leave and then it just comes right. Does the crime wave come right?
Comes right back.
Yeah.
Well, and you and I both, we've both been to DC, man. When you go to DC, almost at every way you turn, you're going to see a law enforcement presence.
Yeah.
And now once you get out into some of the neighborhoods, it's not like that, but definitely around the Capitol, definitely around
Georgia,
you're going to see a heavy presence of law enforcement.
Yeah. But
it really struck me when I heard the governor of Mississippi say, "Hey, I'm sending National Guard to DC, but you've got a problem in your own state with a city in Jackson, but you're not trying to work with those local officials to reduce the gun violence in that city." And so again, it goes back. Everything is played into this. It's being politicized, and unfortunately, I have to put this in there, Monty, is that what is the major population in Jackson?
Right. And that's what
they look like you and I.
Right. And that's the question. Who benefits? Right.
Yeah.
Like, again, and that's where I would again take the politics out. Again, for us as true servant leaders, that's what we're concerned about, is saving lives. Why are we not in an uproar with all of these? There's several cities, that are just inundated and being overrun, and they're not being helped. There's no strategy. Again, I'm very fortunate to live in a fantastic state, Georgia, and particularly the suburbs of Atlanta. I am very fortunate that my Republican, governor and, my Democratic, mayor get along very well, and actually have for quite some time, focused on the mission of keeping, the city and the state safe and cooperate. Yeah. Do they see eye to eye all the time? No, but they're focused on actually making the lives better, of the citizens of Georgia. And again, we have to have that. And we have to have that. You don't have to agree on everything, but you have to be focused on making sure, that occurs. And if it can occur here, it can occur anywhere. But you have to be people that, put their ego aside and are focused on taking care of the citizens they swore to protect.
Yeah. Well, Monty, I'm so glad that you brought that up about Georgia. You've got a Republican governor. You've got a Democrat leader
Yep.
And those two are, like you said, they're working together for the better of public safety. And so, and like you said, this isn't, put the politics aside and focus on the quality of life, focus on the public safety, and you don't have the problems that some of the other major cities are having. And I think that's, once again, if there was some true, if you were really sincere about helping the mayor of DC, helping the police chief of DC reduce crime, you would have came in and even on your first term and said, hey, what can we do on the federal side to help you reduce crime? Or now I'm back in, what can we do now? But now we're just going to send in the military, and it's going to look like you are occupying parts of DC. And I think, there's been some people who have said, well, you don't really see them in the areas where they really need to be at.
Well, and that's and again, yeah. And so, yes, right. But then again, we don't really want to put them there because they're not really trained.
They're not really trained.
And that's the thing. Been the thing is, hey, we can keep them in, DuPont Circle, Georgetown, some of these around there. And the theory is that the trained DC officers are able to get out into the rest of the city that really need them and are trained and understand. That's the theory, right? So, well, along with FBI and ATF and all these other, they're supplementing. There's somewhat of a strategy, but who's making the call? Who's planning this? That's the question, right?
And I don't even think they know, Monty. No. I think this is who's really leading it. I mean, you got one time you hear the U.S. attorney is running. One time you hear the attorney general is running, or next time you hear the FBI is running, or but the real focus should definitely be on reducing the crime, working with the local officials to where they can do the things that they need to do to address those target areas where gun violence has increased. But I think when you go to DC and you see more National Guard around the Capitol or around certain federal buildings, it's almost kind of like, it's so intimidating. But like you said, we're not going to send them into the heart of certain neighborhoods in DC because, one, they don't have that law enforcement training.
No, and to your point, like you're exactly right. Some of them are accountants, some are, data analysts, and it's one thing. You and I have been. It's not a big deal, to go into a hot area. We don't. That's almost like what we truly look forward to. That's not what they signed up.
No, you're right. No,
they signed up for it.
No.
We don't want to make things a worse situation because again, human nature is I panic. I got this piece of iron on my leg. Maybe I can, and that's how bad things happen.
Yeah, I go back to the movie of what was it, First Blood? Yeah. With and when Rambo was out in the in this area, and you had these guys from the National Guard show up, and they blow up this bunker area where he was in, and they were like, well, hey, you got to come well, no, I'm a pharmacist, man. This isn't my full-time job. So we're still dealing with, even though we're still dealing with people, what they're doing in DC now is not their full-time job. And this is not something that they're, normally that they would do.
Right.
And it's a different function. And I think, I would like to know how some of the men and women what their opinions are about them being deployed into a major city, and they have pretty much the same powers as the local law enforcement.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, Monty. This is, as we talk about the use of military in domestic law enforcement. And we're hearing about, this may happen in Chicago, or this may happen in Baltimore. Well, those cities, Chicago definitely has a problem. I go back to what happened on the 4th of July when you have, I mean, you know, the over 40 something shootings, and over, you know, a dozen people are killed in that one day of the 4th of July. Is the military the solution?
I want to. Here's the thing. I think it's time for for us, as men of color to step up and show some real leadership. And average is keeping our people down. We don't hold any standards as like, that's not the way we handle shit. That's not the way we grab a gun and we start shooting because, they tell us this is what we're worth.
Yeah.
You're not worth, grade A schools and opportunities. What you're worth is a pistol and some dope, and go out and get your. And by the way, I speak as, there by the grace of God, I'm not in this, but no one invests. Here's the thing. Here's the reality. The cure of cancer are probably in these pockets. These amazing brains are in these cities, and we don't do anything, and we allow it. As my leaders of minority groups, for this to happen, we allow other people to kind of marginalize and say, hey, okay. We allow mayors, Chicago mayors, just like, hey, it's average, it's okay, it's cool. It's in no city and no thing can it be cool. Can it be? You have to be outraged, and you should be marching every single day, not blaming, but you better find a solution.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unacceptable. Yeah. It's unacceptable that this is the trend that has been allowed to, they're okay with this.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay with this.
You're right. And like you said, I mean, you've got to invest in your communities. And, if just to say, okay, well, hey, this is what's going to happen. There's no hope for this generation.
It's a whole generation that we're losing of very intelligent. Look, I mean, come on. I mean, they're adapting. Look, that game of running dope, people think it's all easy. Let me just tell you something. It ain't. No. I mean, imagine if we trained them how to be entrepreneurs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we want to take the easy route. Politicians want to, they know that they can sprinkle a little bit of, I don't know, something to this population and get their vote and not do anything.
Yeah.
They don't feel obligated to do anything.
Yeah. Well, and I think, one of the things is that you have, this is, as we talk about the politics that creeps into our society, you've got some certain people who, hey, I've got this nonprofit organization.
Right.
Hey, I'm running for office. I can make sure you get this, $500,000 grant money that can help you do this here.
Yep.
But you're really not investing that money in the community. You're not putting it back into community centers. You're not putting it back into youth programs that are really going to get these kids off of the streets, to teach these kids a trade. Yep. You got some kids who live in these urban cities, man, they don't know anything about the country life. They don't know anything about riding a horse. They don't know. If you get them outside of that element and put them into some other element and say, hey, you may have a skill of being a carpenter or being.
Hey, but here's the other thing is, think about all the things that we need, all the technology that we could come in and get them, when it comes to AI and data analysts and scientists and everything, that it wouldn't take much to invest in them and open up the world. We're over here recruiting from, countries like India because they have a plethora of educated. We didn't invest.
Yeah.
We can easily invest in that. It's not right. It's stupid. We're over here, investing in other countries to pull their talent over here because we're too dumb. We're too dumb to invest in our own resources. Those folks are resources. They got this amazing thing up here.
Yeah.
We got this, but we don't invest in them. We don't take ownership, and it's not our fault. It's someone else's fault. It's the white guys. It's the black guys. It's the Hispanic guys. It's their fault. Meanwhile, give me your vote. I'll give you everything you want.
Yeah.
When do we hold people accountable? Okay, protect my family while I go to work and I build a safer community where I believe in faith and growing together as a society, not hating each other over silliness. That's what the devil wants, man. We're over here giving poison to each other and justifying it, and we're okay with it.
Yeah, and it's been going on for a very long time.
Yeah,
very long time.
Think about, like, again, back in the the late 50s, the scourge. Some populations were okay with our population, minority groups, being overrun.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen in others, as it has happened in ours.
Yeah, you're absolutely
There's
right.
no reason why we that, again, that we can't have a dominant, abundant, successful, that can be a paradigm shift tomorrow where we have the majority of millionaires.
Yeah, well, and Monty, and as we talk about the use of military as domestic law enforcement, I think the one thing, and getting into this topic into this conversation about, you go back and you look at the crack epidemic, and how that impacted the minority community, the Black community.
Yeah.
And you go back and you saw the movies of the New Jack cities that was actually really happening.
Yeah.
You go back to what happened with in New York with with Bumpy and all these
Oh yeah.
There was some, these were real life things that were happening in the Black community. And
EMF, that affected nearly 3/4 of the country.
Yeah. And here we are decades later, still dealing with the same problem. We had there wasn't a lot of gun violence back then, but it is progressed, gotten worse over every decade. And I said this, people will say, how did these guns and drugs get into South Central LA? I mean, I don't know too many brothers who had that kind of money to go across the border to bring that type of drugs into South Central LA. But again, we have allowed these things to happen in our communities. But I go back to something that you mentioned earlier. Where's the voice of the Black community?
Right.
Where are the leaders in the Black community to step up and say, we've got to take our communities back?
Yeah.
Because the things that we are seeing in Chicago, Baltimore, and all these other major cities, it's unacceptable, and it's time to really, work with those leaders in those communities to make the quality of life a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that has to be the mission, is making things better. I mean, again, we're getting to your point. We're to the stage that we're going to deploy the military. Holy Christmas!
Yeah, well, and like I said, I think as the one guy said in the news clip, hey, if it makes things safer, okay, but I don't have anything to say. I don't really have an input in it, but I don't think it's at that level to where you have to deploy the military into these cities, other than to make it, politicize it, work with those local officials. You've got the ATF, FBI, all these federal agencies work together with local law enforcement. And now you've had this feel, especially in DC, that, how do we really focus on the real mission, and that is to reduce crime?
Here's what I wish, honestly, we speak, about this issue in a theoretical way. I wish that leaders, every, one from, the Minnesota mayor to, Chicago mayor to, every, all these leaders. All right, everybody, guess where we're going to be staying the next month? We're going to be living in these communities.
Yeah.
Okay. Without protection, without, like, we're going to be living just like they do. Just like, do you have a little bit different, feeling, because you're speaking from a protected, place.
Yeah.
And you're speaking theory.
Yeah.
Would you have a different urgency if you were your family were there? No police, no protection, no. Would you be doing it? But we don't.
Yeah.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I get why we have to. Why we feel we have to have. We want to have the military. And okay, perhaps it's an overreaction. It's a disaster waiting to happen. But again, chunking up. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Where those folks are. When we see a disaster, we're walking right past a house fire. That's what I'm saying. Like, so okay, we're talking about crime has gone down by 4% or 12%. Or the numbers are still outrageous as far as assaults and murders. What are we doing here? We're okay. We're with the level of violence. We're okay with that.
Yeah. That's unacceptable. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. Well, Monty, man, as an hour goes by quick when we're having good conversations, man. And this has been I definitely thank you for taking the time out of your busy evening to come on and be a guest on the podcast. I will always reach out to you and invite you to be on to be a guest, because you bring a wealth of knowledge and information to the conversation. But Monty, before we go, let people know how they can get in touch with you and about your training and the great things that you all are doing with law enforcement around the country.
Absolutely. Yeah. Personally, if you guys would love to link up with me and shoot me a message and tell me, hey, you don't like my hair. Okay. That's contact me, at LinkedIn, Monty, Bynum, LinkedIn there also, or, check us out, adbtraining.com or adbnation.com. Our whole mission is actually to improve law enforcement so that we better serve the entire country, our folks that step forward and the folks that we serve. So,
yeah. All right. Well, again, Monty, I want to appreciate it and thank you. And I want to thank those who tune in tonight on our social media platforms, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on Facebook. And I want to say, if you enjoyed this episode of You in the Law podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It doesn't cost you anything. Give us a good review. You can also if you didn't catch all of this episode, it will be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And to know more about You in the Law podcast, go to our website, www.youinthelawpodcast.com. That's www.youinthelawpodcast.com. And Monty, again, I appreciate it. Thank you. And everybody, make sure you tune in next Thursday for another definitely an informative topic as we tackle some critical issues related to policing in America. Again, thank you and have a good night, and we'll see you next Thursday.
All right. Thank you.